Hi everyone. Thank you for attending our LavaCon sponsored webinar with Barry Saiff and Saiff Solutions. He has a panel with him, and I'm going to let him introduce the panel. But first, I wanted to let you know that now is the time to register for LavaCon for Las Vegas. And if you haven't registered yet, look around for a money-saving code that you can get some amount off of your registration fees. It's going to be a great time in Las Vegas. We have a really great panel. Slate of webinars. Of workshops and sessions all ready to go for you. We have over 83 right now, and we have several outside events planned. And as always, with LavaCon, the food's going to be amazing. It's going to be in Las Vegas, and we're going to be in the downtown area of Las Vegas, so you won't have a lot of the craziness going on, but it's going to be a really good time to have good networking with some of the best minds in our industry. So today's webinar is about Agile and technical writing outsourcing. As a manager who handles both remote teams and Agile technical writing, this is a great, timely webinar for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people, as this really is the future of our world, both the Agile software development process and outsourcing for the same. So I'm going to turn it over to Barry, and at the end of this, we'll have Jack Melisani give us more about LavaCon 2016 in Vegas. Okay. So Barry, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Thanks very much, Ryan. Okay, so welcome to our webinar about Agile development and technical writing outsourcing, a match made in heaven, ? So I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then about 10 minutes ago, you should have all gotten an email with a list of questions, and in a few slides, I'll be showing you that list. But you're welcome. If you've thought about that and have some answers, you're welcome to type in your answers in the chat window, and we'll look at those a bit later. So let's get started. So our agenda, we're going to introduce the experts we have with us here today. We're going to show those questions about your experience, and we'll talk about those. We'll find out where people are at with both in experience terms with Agile and with technical writing outsourcing. And then I'm going to talk about technical writing outsourcing. We'll use that abbreviation TWO, TWO, the myths, the successes, how to make it successful, what are the risks, what are the pitfalls. And then we'll talk about where tech writers fit in an Agile environment. And Dave will help us there, as well as GAILE. We'll talk about a specific case study. And then we're going to try and leave about 30 minutes at the end of this. So by around 11:30, we're going to try and wrap up our presentation so that we have a lot of time left, maybe 25, 30 minutes at the end for your questions and discussion. So let's get started. So who am I? My name is Barry Saiff. I've been doing technical communications, technical documentation for over 3 decades. Mostly in the U.S. I moved to the Philippines in 2010, and I started a technical writing outsourcing company here called Saiff Solutions. And we have several large customers in Japan and the U.S. And I've been a regular speaker at LavaCon for some time now, and at the Las Vegas one, I'll be leading a 4-hour workshop for documentation managers and also a 1-hour breakout session for doc managers. So that's me. And then next, we have Dave Wilkes. And why don't you share your webcam, Dave, and introduce yourself.
Sure. How is everybody today? My name is Dave Wilkes. I've been in documentation, technical writing for close on 20 years now. I've spent several years in various flavors of Agile environments, and I both have experience in Agile and in tech writing outsourcing.
So, and I'll just say, I have experience working with Dave as you know, he's a customer of mine, and so I can tell you that Dave is an excellent manager, and he has a real good understanding of how to manage tech writers and how to operate effectively in a national environment. Okay, and then let's move on to our next panelist, GAILE. GAILE, why don't you turn on your webcam and introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, welcome to all the attendees. My name is GAILE. I am located here in the Philippines, technical writer, and I have been at Saiff Solutions for more than 2 years now. I have worked for different clients with different projects. Also, I have learned different tools such as FrameMaker, DocZone, and Madcap Flare. I am pleased with my job because I have the ability to work for a variety of industries and meet different types of people from different locations. I consider technical writing a lifetime career because the skill is in high demand and continues to grow as technology advances. Thank you.
Thank you, GAILE. Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave this slide up here that has the questions that we sent you in email, and you can type in your chat window your answers, and you don't have to type the whole question. You can just type like 1Y, 2N, 3NA, and we'll take a look at that. So we're going to move on. Okay, so we're going to start off talking about technical writing outsourcing, and we're going to look at, you know, there are a lot of myths about outsourcing in general and about technical writing outsourcing, in particular that it results in low quality, particularly if it's outsourced offshore, that it always leads to layoffs. And those two are often true, but not always. So we say they're myths. You know, myths are things that people kind of assume to be true all the time, but they're not true all the time. And really, Saiff Solutions was designed as a company to address this issue of quality in offshore writing. And so we deliver the same level of quality you get with writers in the US or the UK. And actually, in the last 5 years, we've not been involved in an engagement where writers were laid off before, during, or after our involvement. So technical writing outsourcing can and does lead to layoffs, but clearly not in every situation. And then I put here this myth that whether or not outsourcing happens is up to me. Unless you're the CEO or someone close to that level, it's probably not up to you. It's not something that you can prevent from happening by ignoring it or resisting it or trying to wish it away. It's, you know, it's part of a large historical forces are driving the growth of outsourcing, and so it really helps to understand it so that you can be prepared for it. And then, you know, there's all kinds of myths that all outsourcing situations lead to layoffs, all outsourcing situations lead to a reduction in quality, all outsourcing situations lead to X, Y, or Z, you name it, and any statement like that is bound to be inaccurate a lot of the time. So what happens when technical writing outsourcing works well? So these are, you can see some of the things that result. And, you know, one of the things that people are not prepared for maybe is this improved morale. But I've seen this happen where, let's say you've got a team of senior, fairly advanced technical writers in the United States, and they are doing a lot of things that maybe to them are beneath them or kind of rote that they'd rather not focus on. And then you outsource a lot of those activities to an outsourced team, and so the morale of your existing team actually improves because now they're focused on the stuff that they really want to do. It certainly can result in reduced costs, but if someone tells you that you're going to save 80% or something like that from outsourcing, don't believe them. There are increased costs as well, and so, you know, it takes more training, more management, more travel in some cases. There's all kinds of costs that you have to spend to make outsourcing work, and you can save money if you manage it properly, but it's more like 10 to 25% is average savings over a period of years. If you can realize that, then you're doing well on cost savings, and that's to a lot of companies, saving that much is quite significant. And then about the global responsiveness, you know, if you've got customers around the world, it certainly helps to have your authors, your content authors, be from different cultures that more broadly represent your customers. The process and productivity improvements often, you know, result from the whole process of developing an outsourcing plan, because really what you do when you decide to outsource is you look at, all right, what you break down everything into small processes and say what's happening, what can happen in other locations, what can happen more effectively if it's outsourced, and that whole endeavor can improve your processes. And we'll talk a little more about process in the further slide. So a couple important success factors is you want to choose the country that you outsource to. And certainly language is a big issue. Many people are surprised to learn that the Philippines is consistently rated the #1 country in business English, even ahead of the US and the UK, because really, this is for business English. In the world of business in the Philippines, English is the language. It's the language of business. If you go out on the street, you'll find people with a wide variety of English skills. But in business, there's very good English skills. And you know, you certainly want to be careful about how you go about outsourcing, who you partner with. You want to consider your process maturity, because if in your environment you have tech writers who have great difficulty finding out about user interface changes because there's no effective way for them to be notified and the developers don't cooperate to make that happen, outsourcing can actually magnify your process issues. So you need to have some level of process maturity before you take on outsourcing. So these are some ways to get started. So let's talk briefly about the risks. When outsourcing goes wrong, it can be due to a lot of different factors, and people often assume that the problem is location, or the problem is the fact that it's outsourced, when it may be, for example, function. So maybe this is a company that's never had tech writers. They add a team of outsourced tech writers, but their engineers, their QA folks, their marketing folks, don't know how to work with tech writers. And a lot of the problems they'd have those same problems if they hired tech writers in their existing location. So there the problem is functional cooperation, not necessarily location. Inclusion is another one. Often the tech writers that are in the, say the United States will be included in all the wikis and all the email lists, the conference calls, you name it, and then the offshore writers are not included, and people wonder why they don't do as well. Well, you have to include them. Language can certainly be an issue, and when you have people who are writing whose first language is not English, editing and quality control becomes very important. You can't drop those things out. Experience level, often I've seen situations where the writers in the U.S. get very frustrated with the writers, say, in India, because the U.S. writer has 20 years experience, the Indian writer has 1 or 2 years, and that might be the main reason why there's frustration, not the fact that the person is Indian or is located in India. Culture is very important and can lead to a lot of problems if you don't understand it. If you don't have a good awareness of your culture, of the strengths and weaknesses of your culture and of the other culture you're working with. And if you have the attitude that your culture is better, you're almost guaranteed to fail. All cultures have strengths and weaknesses. Competency, there are more and less competent tech writers in every location and in every situation. So that's going to vary. And that makes hiring and the choice of who you work with very important. And of course management, and it really all gets back to management. When tech technical writing outsourcing works well, it's because it's managed well and because the management is really paying attention to what needs to happen to make it work well. So how can combining technical writing outsourcing and Agile help you? Well, if you have a situation where you have more work than writers, and Agile, if you just take it on Agile, that can increase this kind of issue, because now your writers have to be in daily stand-ups. They have, a higher communication workload with the other teams. And in that case, outsourcing can help you expand your capacity, expand your team at lower cost. If some of your engineers or QA staff have moved overseas, it could be a great benefit to have technical writers in that location or in the same time zone or even in a close time zone that's only an hour or two away. If your scarcity is management and training, so let's say you can hire tech writers where you are, but it's hard to find experienced ones, and you don't have the time to train and support brand new tech writers. Well, if you partner with the good outsourcing company, they're going to provide that management training on their end, and they're going to provide you writers in some cases that already have a fair amount of experience. If you're already using technical writing outsourcing and you have process problems, and as I mentioned before, if your processes are not adequate to support distributed teams, well, that's a situation where taking on Agile could help you make technical writing outsourcing work. There may be, there's a lot of other ideas that we could come up with there. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dave, and he's going to start talking about Agile and where tech writers fit into an Agile environment.
Hi, Barry. Thanks very much. So this is a relatively complicated looking slide, but it's really not that complicated. It's essentially, I like the title up here where it describes the balance of power, where within Agile, you have a team over on the left, and you have a product owner up at the top, and you have stakeholders on the right, and Scrum Masters on the left. And you'll see arrows going to and from each of these groups. Product owners are defining the sprint goals, while the team is defining and committing to the tasks to meet those goals. Those goals that the product owner defines come from the stakeholders, and the stakeholders work with the product owners to clarify the goals. Product owners pass that on to the team, and of course the product owners also report back to the stakeholders. There's also a feedback loop between the team and the stakeholders, and really the person kind of refereeing all this and making sure everything is working smoothly is the Scrum Master there at the bottom. So not all organizations follow this exactly. Often their balance of power shifts, kind of like a government. Sometimes a strong leader will shift the balance of power in an entire government. In Agile, depending on the organization, but depending on the individuals, you might have a very strong, outspoken stakeholder, or you might have a weak product owner, or you might have somebody on the team who works, sort of becomes the voice of the team. The way documentation really fits well into this loop is, in a world of rainbows and unicorns and some organizations, the technical writer actually sits on the team as a team member. One of the critical kind of terms I think in Agile is the word team, which basically it encompasses QA and engineers and technical writers, UI, UX, all as team members, and those roles are kind of blurred. So one of the big terms in Agile is swarming, and when things need to get done, team members all swarm regardless of what their title is. And so a technical writer can help QA items, they can help UI, UX, possibly sometimes they can even help engineering. But that's not always the case where a technical writer sits on the team. which is unfortunate, and it needs to change. But when that happens, a technical writer often still has to interface with the team, interface with the product owners, scrum masters, and even the stakeholders. And that's where really having a good understanding of who, what roles each individual has really comes into play. So, for example, a technical writer working on a software and user instructions is going to need to know a lot about the why of why this product is being developed, why a feature is being worked on, and the person to go to is really the product owner. That product owner should have all of the business acumen, around to understand what this feature is for, what problem it solves for the users, and the product owner is essentially the voice of the customer in many ways, the voice of the audience. We all know in technical writing, understanding your audience is critical, and your product owner is the person who should understand the audience as well as anybody, except maybe the UI, UX people on the team. But also the Scrum Master is a really critical person to know and get along with as well, because they are really, like I mentioned earlier, the referee. They're guiding traffic throughout the process. And if you have things that need to get done and you want them to be done by the Scrum team, whether it's reviews of content or whether it's getting on people's schedules for questions, you need to talk to the Scrum Master, because they can help you fit into the capacity of the Scrum team. Each team commits to a certain amount of work every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long the sprint is, and they don't have a whole lot of room for extraneous things that come in. So you need to become part of that capacity, and the person to really help you out with that is the Scrum Master. And then, of course, if you have direct access to the stakeholders, that gives you even more understanding of the business case behind the various features that are being created and so on. But in summary, your product owner is going to know the business as well as anybody. Your Scrum Master is going to be the person to talk to about the tactics to take within a Scrum team to get things done. And of course, the team members on the team are critical as well. If you're creating API documentation as opposed to end user documentation, your primary SME maybe not be the product owner. It could be the developers on the team or QA. But it's critical to be involved in these teams and to be involved in some of the critical ceremonies that they participate in, like the stand-ups, retrospectives, demos, and sprint planning. Those are the primary meetings, or in Agile terminology, ceremonies that they participate in, and you should. I highly recommend that you get involved in those. So that's this slide in a nutshell.
So Dave, just one more thing I'd like you to address. User stories, where do they fit in, and why do they matter?
Well, a user story is essentially something that comes from, a lot of times there's like a release planning, or there's some sort of pre-sprint planning where they come up with a user story that essentially breaks down a feature or a enhancement into something simple that says, as a user of the product, I want to be able to log in so I can use the product, something along those lines. That it defines the person that it's important to, what they need to do, and why they need to do it. And that drives a lot of the development. So it allows the team members to understand who they're developing for. It allows the technical writer to understand who the audience is. A lot of times organizations will define these as personas. So they might say, as Barry, I need to log on to GoToMeeting so I can present a webinar. And so they create these user stories that get refined as time goes on through the user stories kind of start there with the stakeholders over on the right, and they move up to the product owners. And it's not really a direct line. There's a lot of interaction in between there. But those product owners then work with the teams to say, okay, so here's a user story that says Barry needs to log on to GoToMeeting so that he can present a webinar. Is this something we can accomplish within our sprint, whether it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And if it's not, then they break those down into smaller user stories that maybe say, as Barry, I need to be able to log on and, you know, get started using it. You know, they break them down into smaller, more consumable bits. That complicates things for the writers, unfortunately, because sometimes what's done in a sprint is not necessarily what can be written about in a task topic or something like that. But that's kind of how the user stories work, and they do bring more clarity on the audience than old requirements ever did.
Very good. Well, thanks, Dave. So let's turn it over to Gail now and have her share about what it's been like for her as a writer working in an agile environment, in an outsourced agile environment. So Gail, if you can turn on your webcam and share with us.
Thanks, Barry. Well, here is my story. I am currently working with Dave, who is also here with us right now. Dave is the technical writing manager and is also my Scrum Master. Dave and I have our stand-up meeting every 11 a.m., twice a week. We communicate by exchanging emails and by having live chats and conference calls. For me, Dave is an excellent technical writing manager. He is also strict when it comes to meeting deadlines. During our Scrum meeting, Dave ensures that all issues are resolved promptly and tasks are explained well. Whenever we have sprint planning meetings, we plan what to achieve during the sprint. So to start off, I read and research about the product and its features. Then I create a topic structure. After that, I start writing drafts. The drafts are turned over to our editor, who is also in a different location. After the revisions are made, I send the draft to Dave for peer review. That's it. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so thanks, Gail. We're going to here, and we're almost, so we have a case study here, and this is a situation, it's based on actually a real situation that I was involved in. The developers started before the tech writers got involved. So it's not really possible for the writers to work on the same content on the same schedule as development and QA. So the question is, how can the writers best participate? Should they skip the portions already developed and jump into the team sprint schedule, or devise their own sprint schedule and match the dates of the team but work on different content? Or is there another approach? So if you're the documentation manager, what do you do? Let's see, I think we can, is everyone unmuted? Because you're welcome to jump in and either speak or type in the chat.
Unmuted. Muted. Unmuted.
Okay, so who would like to speak?
This is Jack. I have a question in that if you've got developers coding in sprints and the writer's not on the team, at what point should they be on the team if they're not there from day one?
Right. Well, that's a good question. It kind of depends on your environment. I mean, it certainly makes a difference for the writers to start off from the beginning and be able to match the rest of the team, and as Dave was explaining, to be full members of the team. But it's possible to make it work with the writers starting later. The case study is looking at, okay, well, sometimes you can't control that. You don't even find out about it until they've already started developing. So then how do we handle that?
Okay, good.
Hey, Barry. This is Dave. This looks awful familiar. I don't know where you got this from, but I can say in response to what Jack just asked, one of the things that we did was, I think actually the way GAILE described sort of our relationship and how we work shed some light on how actually we manage this same type of situation, which was essentially we created our own agile teams and created our own sprints just for documentation. And what we did is, we created a backlog just as you would for any documentation or any agile process, a backlog of the things that have already been completed by the developers. But also in that backlog, we put in anything that's new that was being worked on now concurrently. And we worked with our stakeholders, which was basically the product owner of the Agile team, to is there somebody else there? Anyway, so we worked with the product owner to prioritize what needed to get done first, and that's how we managed this situation.
To nie ma veze z brisanim, to nemám centro. To nema veze s brisanim. To samo
Muted.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I fixed it now. I opened it up for everyone to be able to talk, but I don't think everybody realized they could talk.
Right. So if you have background noise at your location, you can also mute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks, Dave. So Jack, did that answer your question, or do you want to ask again?
No, that's good. I mean, we even had one of the attendees say writers should start from day one, even if they are quote-unquote chickens, if nothing to document. Not sure how it can really work if that doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah, I just find as a writer, even as a doc manager, you often don't have the power to make those decisions. You may be supporting multiple products or multiple projects, and you just don't have the time to be involved that early, or you don't find out about things soon enough. And I mean, in general, in my experience, in tech writing, we're always making less than ideal situations work. And I think Agile is actually a more flexible environment than most others for doing that. It is very adjustable.
Okay, good.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on. What we got here? Oh, so let's talk about other questions and comments, not necessarily about this case study, about anything we've covered. What is it you'd most like to understand about Agile or about tech writing outsourcing or how they fit together? Or is there something you want to share with us that you think would add to the discussion?
We do have a chat question from one of the audience members, and it's more of a working as an outsourced contract writer who says, for a tech writer who is working on a contract, how do you keep a steady income and receive benefits?
Very good question. So obviously there's a wide variety of employment situations that tech writers can be in any country. I mean, I can speak to the model that we use at Saiff Solutions, which is that our tech writers are full-fledged Saiff Solutions employees, and we offer compensation and benefits that are very competitive locally. But because there's such a great difference in the economy, because basically like the cost of living in the Philippines is 1/10 of San Francisco, or maybe 1/5 of the U.S. in general, that enables us to pay our writers very well, to give them very good benefits, and yet still save our customers in the U.S. or Japan or other countries a lot of money. So does that answer the question, or maybe I'm missing something there?
Well, I think a little of this is more of, and this comes as a, I could even ask you, Barry, how do you manage your cash flow? If you're a tech writer doing an outsourced writing contract, you can always specify that in your payment schedule, you get maybe 20% up front, 50% on first delivery, 30% on second delivery, or how you want to structure it. I would never wait to the very end of the project before billing the client.
Right.
I mean, that's one way to do it.
Right. Right. And you know, we're not a writer, we're a company. And we would love to be able to get paid, say, half up front, but we've never been able to negotiate that. Our customers just won't do that. But what they will generally do is typically a project lasts many months, or at least several months, or it might be ongoing for years. And so each month, the end of the month, we send them an invoice, and generally they'll pay within 30 days.
Right.
So we have to wait for the money, but we get it regularly.
I've also been in a situation where the company absolutely refused to pay in less than 90 days from the date of invoice. So what I did is I factored the invoice, and which means that some company will advance you the money so you can live on it. There's a cost involved, but what I did is I added that cost into my bill rate as the cost of money, and that was one way I could make sure I had cash flow until they paid the invoice. Because what if they're 30 days late paying the invoice? Now you're at 120 days. And as Andrew mentions, Andrew Davis says, as a contractor, never stop marketing your services, because you always want to have that next project ready to go when this one ends or overlap them. Not that I'm Italian.
Well, that's very helpful, Jack. I mean, maybe in the future I'll use your factoring approach. That might come in handy, because Saiff Solutions is 5 years old, and for the last 2 years we've had consistently good customers who have paid us on time, and who are just good to work with. But prior to that, years ago, we had customers that were not good to work with, and I found that's the most important thing, is choosing your customers, picking the right customers. But it's also important what Andrew said about marketing. What I found is the two most important things to pay attention to ensure the survival of the company are, number one, savings, and number two, marketing.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have a few more. Go ahead.
I was going to say, switching gears back to the Agile thing, I believe it's, let me scroll back up. Kim had a really good point about documentation managers or managers of tech writers need to be more assertive as a whole. I've run across this many times in my professional career, that just because we have the ability to get things done doesn't mean we shouldn't speak up when there's a better way to do it. So the best thing is definitely to understand what is the best possible way to do things, and then speak up to make sure that you can change the process if necessary. I just started with my job. I was lucky enough to have a director of our department who was willing to listen to ideas about how to improve things, because they see the pain, they see the issues, and product owners actually see the issues too. But they don't know how to fix it for certain.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, Agile works best when everybody contributes, everybody has a voice and is heard. And I mean, you have to speak up. It's important.
Can I make a comment on that real quick? This is Dave.
Sure.
So I think one of the things to remember about Agile is it is not a command and control type of situation. So in the old waterfall process, managers would come in and they would define, what was going to happen in 2 years from now and so on. But Agile is intentionally, as you saw, that balance of power. It does not support a command and control type of organization. So managers often don't have that power to really go into an organization and say, okay, we're going to make all the technical writers be on your team. What works best is if the individual tech writers take it upon themselves to make themselves more available to the team, to get to know the team better, to develop the relationships on that team. Now, managers can move things along and try to get things pushed in the right direction, but in Agile, there's much more power invested in the actual team member than in other organizations.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave, and I think the question clearly relates to Agile, as Dave just explained, but it also relates to technical writing as a craft and how to be successful at that. And some of you may not be aware of the 7 Habits of Highly Successful Technical Writers, which if you go to our website you can find. We have infographics on that. So far I've created 2 versions, the first 7 habits of highly effective technical writers, and then the additional 7 habits of highly effective technical communications leaders. And one of those habits, I think habit 7 of the first set, is contribute, right? So you need to speak up, you need to contribute what you have to add. So who else has a question or a comment that we can address? Let's see.
This is Jack again.
Okay, well if there's...
Now, let me tell you here, Barry, one of the things I found being an external, either outsourced technical writer or contract technical writer, is that I could say things that the employees couldn't get away with. So I could tell the manager they were wrong and they shouldn't do this because I didn't have a job I was worried about. I knew I was going to be out of there in 6 weeks whether they liked me or not. So I actually found it advantageous to not be a employee technical writer.
Well, that's interesting because I worked in the U.S. in tech writing for 26 years, and for a large part of that time I was a contract writer, although I was typically at a company 2.5 years, 2 years, often longer than the full-time employees.
Right.
But I found because I was a contractor, I got more respect and I was listened to more.
Yes, because they pay you more, so therefore they're going to listen to you more.
Yes. Right,
Yeah.
and I didn't have to go to all of the useless meetings. I could just go to the useful ones.
And here's another true story, that one of the reasons I started my own tech writing company, because I was so much faster than some of the peers that I was working with. I specifically remember a time when one of their employees asked me to slow down because I was making them look bad. Dude.
Well, that is unusual honesty.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it would be more common for them to sabotage you as opposed to making a clear request. So, but it's a little different, though, when you're operating as an outsourcing firm versus a contractor. But it varies. I mean, I think one of the benefits of a firm like Saiff Solutions that's run by someone with a lot of experience in the field is that, you know, I can represent the company to the client and I can help make things work because I know how tech writing works. I have a lot of experience with it, and the clients respect that.
Right. Another value is I've been in companies where they hired the tech writer and the tech writer needed, say, FrameMaker and WebWorks and didn't have a license, and the company didn't want to buy that for them. But the writer didn't want to buy it because it's expensive, and they didn't know if the next client was going to use it. So it was just a really odd situation on who's responsible for the tools that you're going to actually developing on, or on which you will be developing for you grammarians.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Saiff Solutions offers that's kind of unique in the Philippines is for new technical writers, the opportunity to work with our editors who each have more than 10 years experience in tech writing, and me, I have 32 years experience. So there's a lot of value from the mixture of experience and also of culture. And one of the things I tell people about how to make tech writing outsourcing work, which I noticed I didn't have in this slide, in this presentation, is it really helps to have a mix of cultures. You know, if Saiff Solutions were just a bunch of Filipino tech writers, we would not be nearly as effective as when we started out. We were a few Filipino tech writers and me. And now we've got people from Canada, India, US, and the Philippines. And that makes a tremendous difference.
All right, we have another question from the audience. I'm just going to go ahead and jump in here and ask it. In my Agile environment, our product owners typically decide if instructions are needed for each release. Is that typical in other companies?
I think Dave could probably address that best. He has a lot of experience with Agile in different places.
Yeah, I think that that's not uncommon. I think that as a tech writer, you should be able to respond to that, respond to their decisions logically. And if there are, if you feel that there are needs for instructions on say, like, I don't know, maybe there's a new feature and it's, something fairly like adding a favorite of something in your software. You've got lists of reports and now it's adding a favorite, and your product owner says, I don't think we need instructions for this. It's really obvious. There's hearts there, just like you see on any other product. We don't need to write up any instructions on that. I think it's up to the writer to ask pertinent questions, and including things like, are you sure we don't need instructions on this? What about this audience member that's in a different country, or what about our just you have to be there to ask the right questions, because they might be right, but they could be wrong too. And you should be able to ask the questions based on your knowledge of the audience, your knowledge of the software, your knowledge of the industry, as to whether or not that you agree with them.
Could you not just do simple A/B testing where you just do a usability test with the product and a customer, and that way your customers are deciding whether or not it needs help, not you?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that would be the best of all, yeah.
Yeah, I had a situation about a year ago where one of our customers was insisting on a particular wording on their UI, and we had requested that they change it because it was quite misleading. And it took about 5 or 10 minutes on the phone for me to get the customer to see that, okay, if you just look at the definition of this word in English, what you want to say is exactly the opposite of what your text says. And finally he got it, and he got it changed.
I'm going to add one more war story, and then we're going to go ahead and take the last question and then end off for the day. Another advantage of being an external tech writer is that oftentimes you are the only person who sees all the various pieces of the project because you're documenting it. And there was a time when I was documenting an API, an application program interface, and the company at the time was doing a database, and you had 2 ways to access the data. You could either go whole sets of data, find me everybody in California, or just one person at a time. And both the developers in charge of their teams had made an assumption that was completely opposite. And had they waited until they got to usability testing and integration testing, it would have died. And I, as the tech writer, seeing both parts of the puzzle, got the 2 developers together over brownies in a room and said, all right, I don't care which way you do this, but you guys kind of need to pick one. And just by being the outsourced technical writer, seeing all the pieces of the puzzle, was able to save them hundreds, if not thousands of hours of development time. So, yeah, I love your thing about get involved, speak up, because, you're the eyes and ears.
That's a great story. Thank you, Jack.
Okay.
All right. So, any last question? Let's see.
Going once.
So, right. So there's actually, you can ask questions after the webinar is over. I'm available. I'm happy to communicate with you in email, to talk to you on the phone. Our other panelists, Dave and Gail, are also available. And, if you need help with technical writing outsourcing, Saiff Solutions can help you with that. We have experience with Agile as well. And if you're interested in getting a 70% off your registration at LavaCon, contact me and we'll have a conversation about that. You can also get $100 off your registration by using the code SAIFF, S-A-I-F-F.
Correct.
Yes. And then, Jack, do you want to add some other news about LavaCon?
Oh, we're just going to have some, it's going to be amazing. There's going to be flying ping pong balls and gourmet meals and life-size Pong games, and it's going to be, in addition to having a quality program, we're going to have fun. So hope to see everybody.
And I want to add that this is the first LavaCon where I will be giving, along with Mike McGraw, a 4-hour workshop for documentation managers.
That's right. That's right.
There have been past workshops that were new manager bootcamp.
Yep.
This is not just for new managers. This is for all doc managers or quasi-doc managers or team leads. It's going to be very educational and very exciting.
And this year, all the workshops are included in your conference tuition. There's no additional cost to take the workshops. So
that's a great deal.
Yeah.
That's a great deal.
So, all right.
All right.
Ryan, are you still on board?
I'm here.
All right. Anything that you want to announce?
No, not right now. Just be on the lookout for more announcements about LavaCon and also some of the cool events, outside social events we're going to have. We're going to have a costume bar crawl called Crawl from the Grave. It's going to be a lot of fun on Friday night there in downtown Las Vegas. And then, of course, as always, we're going to have our karaoke party. This year we're going to have it as a kickoff party. So that's going to bookend the conference, and it's going to be a lot of cool stuff in the middle too. So stay tuned for more announcements.
Cool. All right, Mary, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for all involved. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.